Hey, Sam, you come up with that intro line?
You didn't tell me that was today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Writer's Room with Sam and Jim. By now, you probably know that what we do on the show is invite aspiring writers into our little writer's room here to help them work on and develop their stories. You can help us out by going to Apple Podcasts and hitting the subscribe button. Better yet, you can rate and review us. Also, you can join the conversation that we're having over on the Writer's Room Facebook page at the Writer's Room with Sam and Jim. Or you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the Sam and Jim. Now, normally what we do is we break story with someone for a pilot and work on the overall shape of their idea. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a scene study. We've invited people on who've been with us before. We asked them to send us a few pages of their work. We're going to read those pages out loud. And then we're going to talk about the things we see in those scenes that are working well or not and try and make them better. First up, we have Zach Freshley.
So, Zach, welcome back.
Welcome back, Zach.
We are excited. We talked to you a bunch of episodes ago.
And if you want to go back and hear his entire episode, that episode is titled Finding the Holy Shit Moments with Zach Freshley. So, Zach, why don't you tell us a little bit, quickly, what your what your pilot is about?
Yeah, so the pilot basically follows a private eye who is kind of just doing his thing, investigating things privately. When his wife, who has been missing for a couple years, suddenly reappears, and then hijinks ensue.
All right. This is the very first scene, actually, of this pilot. What's the title? Is there a title on this pilot yet?
Not yet. It's still untitled pilot.
That's my favorite kind. Untitled Zach Freshley pilot. Let's go.
Act 1. Exterior, suburban neighborhood, day. Larry Musker, 33, average white dude, pulls up to his driveway to find a beat-up Honda Civic blocking it. Larry exits his car and we see that he's on crutches and has a massive cast on his left leg. He cranes his neck down the street to see if he can find the asshole who blocked his driveway. No dice. Larry stabs at the front tire with one of his crutches.
Motherfucker.
Larry mutters to himself under his breath as he slowly crutches his way up the long driveway. Across the street, a dog begins to bark loudly. Larry turns and spots a huge German shepherd sprinting straight towards him, fangs bared. Larry drops the crutches and sprints to his front door, completely uninhibited. His cast breaks and falls off. Larry reaches his door and desperately digs in his pocket for his key. The German shepherd is at the end of the driveway and closing fast. Larry grabs his key and goes to unlock the door, but the key slips from his hand and skitters away. He dives for it, but it's too late. The German shepherd is on top of him. Larry screams in terror and closes his eyes. The next thing he feels is rough, wet tongue slobbering all over him.
Larry Musker?
Larry looks up to see Dean Miller, 28, industrious, quick on his feet, standing over him.
What's going on?
Larry struggles to speak as he's being smothered with dog kisses.
Chester, here, boy.
Chester happily complies. Dean pulls a treat from his pocket and tosses it to the dog.
Good boy, Chester. Good.
What the hell is going on?
Are you Larry Musker?
Yeah. Who the fuck are you?
I'm Dean Miller, and I'm your worst nightmare.
Dean reaches into his jacket pocket. Larry cowers in fear.
Please don't kill me. I've got a family.
What? No, dude, I'm a private investigator.
What?
I've got footage of you sprinting for your porch on your quote-unquote broken leg.
Dean pulls out his phone and shows Larry the footage. Larry goes pale.
Now, I'm no lawyer, but I imagine your little slip-and-fall lawsuit against Mr. and Mrs. Kinsella goes kaput once this video gets entered into evidence.
Look, I can pay you.
Yeah, the guy trying to scam small business owners definitely seems like he's got tons of expendable income.
Whatever they're paying you, I'll double it. We can...
Let's go, Chester.
Dean and Chester to go.
Wait.
Dean smiles to himself before turning to face Larry.
Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call your lawyer and tell him you want to drop the lawsuit. Then you're going to tell him that you feel so bad about causing Mr. and Mrs. Kinsella trouble that you want to pay their legal fees.
Pay their legal fees? That's...
If you'd rather I show this video to a judge?
Okay, fine. I'll do it.
Good. Come on, Chester.
Dean and Chester walk away, leaving Larry lying on the porch. They hop into the car blocking Larry's driveway and drive away. Title card, under investigation.
Woo! How'd that feel, Zach?
Weird, good. You guys killed it. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. And you mean killed it?
Killed it is put a knife through the whole thing.
Right, we ground it to dust.
There's a gaping head wound in this story now.
No, it was great, guys.
But how did it feel to hear the words? What immediately leapt out at you is oh my God, that is so good or so not good?
I like writing dialogue and they talk a lot, which is like, all right, let's get to the point a little bit. But I think it takes a little longer to like when you read it out loud when I read it in my head, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. And generally, it's always about Jim always overwrites everything to the nth degree. I used to underwrite everything in a quest for not laying everything out. And over the years, we've met closer towards the middle because you're right. It's a challenge. You know, the first time you add it, you lay everything out, every beat. I mean, you've got things like he blinks as its own action line and stuff like that. And that's stuff you need. And I think, you know, I don't want to speak to Jim's methodology, but I know it so well, which is when he's writing a scene, he's like exploring every corner. He's tracking himself. He's going down a path and writing down everything he sees and what the characters are saying. And it's just, I can see his thinking as he goes through it. This is the very spew draft, the beginning. And then it's a question of eliminating
what worked. What do we need out of
what do
all
you
that?
actually need? And for me to rewrite Jim is really easy because I am not having to walk through everything. He's done all the heavy lifting. I don't often rewrite Jim because we write separately so much, but when we're working on pilots and stuff, I just go through it. I can so quickly cherry pick the good stuff and lose the rest 90% of the time.
So little to lose, really.
90% of the time he's like, great, I'm good, only because I have the distance from it. And then with me, he does the similar thing, but also a lot of times they're like, you know, you said this thing, I think that actually we should develop that a little more and let's squeeze whatever juice we can out of that. Easy for him to say because I already got the scene into shape. So what we're saying is thanks for getting into shape so that now we can do all the easy stuff.
and some of that stuff, too, is about, especially in a pilot script or a reading script, right? There's production scripts and reading scripts, and you need some of those, he blinks, right? That's a moment. On film, you get that from an actor, but on a page that's only ever going to be read, most likely,
right? You
got to put that in if that's conveying something you think is important.
Right, which is about the rhythm of the scene. So is there anything that you wrote that, okay, so you thought it was a little long. Do you have any other thoughts about this scene that you know so well and now you've heard two people you don't know read it?
I think, like, thinking about it in, like, the totality of the pilot, I think I would change some things. I feel like the dog thing, I think it's fun. I enjoyed writing it, but I think it's kind of, like, weird when I think about, like, what I do with the rest of the script. Does that kind of make sense?
Well, I don't know. What do you do with the rest of the script? How is it weird?
Well, because I feel like if I was, like, reading this or watching this, I was like, oh, this dog thing, like, it's going to come back, right? And it doesn't come back in the rest of the script. So
for me as someone who just read it, I assume I'm being introduced to a clever private detective who loves animals, which never hurts. Who just pulled a little trick to get someone, right? His guy is kind of a low stakes PI.
Yeah,
and he's got a little bag of tricks. This is one of them. Using the dog.
This may not even be his dog, right?
Yeah.
I don't make any assumptions about the dog. So if you never had the dog again, I wouldn't think anything of it.
Oh,
it seems like this is I don't get the sense that this is a guy who every trick is going to be a dog.
Oh, great. That's great.
I'll tell you the question I did have, which is like, so this scene, I think very nicely does, I get that from him. I know he's a PI. I know he's clever enough to come up with this dog thing, right? That's all good. And I think you've executed that piece of story nicely as an intro to the character. I understand something about him, that he's a low-stakes, fairly smart PI. What I wish is once he gets into the conversation with the guy about halfway in and introduces himself, I wish I learned more about him in some way. I wish in that conversation that there was the kind of threats in the conversation sort of goes to the places I would expect it to go. Mm-hmm. Right, he just threatens with showing people the tape. Right, well, that's the thing. Is there flavor to add on that? Can I learn something about how this character thinks and the way he has that conversation, even if it's the meta conversation? He's saying, "Look, you can see how this is going to work, right?" And start telling me things that show me something about this guy's soul. Is he sad about it? Is he commiserating with him? Is he angry at him for trying to rip off the small business people? Right. Whatever that is.
Gotcha.
To echo that, it's about specificity, and it's about, before we get into the details, it's about, since you know Larry is irrelevant. Larry's here to serve a purpose. Dean is our guy, and so what am I learning about Dean, as Jim said, and the way to do that is, to me, is very specific actions or ways that he does something with his particular style and emotional, how he is. And as Jim said, when he says, does he like doing this? If he does like his job, I want to see him kind of skip, not literally, but in the way that he does it. I want you. This is the first scene of your world. I need to be intrigued by Dean.
Yeah.
And I'm not intrigued by a simple, oh, I tricked you into revealing the fact that you were scamming. That's a good scene. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's a perfectly good mechanism to have a scene.
But it's not special. What will make it special is Dean and how he does this in a way that no one else will do.
Let me jump on that. I'm going to bring up something. When we did Hand of God Season 2 with our friend Ben Watkins, we were casting for a seasoned villain. And so Ben wrote up a scene, like a page long, 2 pages maybe, scene, just for casting, right? Because he wanted to, you see emotional colors from the actors, you give them some stuff to play with. And it's this character standing at a stove, and he's talking to somebody we don't see, and he's talking about breakfast and what he's making, and does the guy like it this way? Should he do this, that? And the other guy's not answering. And he goes on for a little bit, and then there's a reveal that the guy he's talking to is tied to a chair, gagged. He's going to kill this guy. Mm-hmm. And so the mood of that whole scene is, oh, shit, this guy's going to kill this guy. And he's having this sort of random conversation about breakfast and how to make it. And it just put this whole spin on where that guy's head's at and what he values and what he thinks is interesting or funny. That's the opportunity you have here in Interesting Dean. It's, does he go back and get the broken pieces of cast and say, you need help? I could help get this back on your leg. If there's a lot of ways you could go in that conversation that goes beyond the simple fact of, well, now I have something on you and I could use it. Mm-hmm. How do they play together with that? What does he make out of that?
So
Gotcha.
To clarify what Jim is saying, Luke, because I think it's a little clarification. The guy who's making breakfast in that scene, he could do that whole breakfast speech very ominously. He could do it with delight. He could do it with sort of a crazy kind of fascination. There's so many ways to do that. And the actor knows, okay, this guy is clearly, he's a murderer. He's a guy, he's a hired killer. So it could go in any direction. And that character, the way he does it is going to define it. Now, you don't have an actor. You have to characterize how Dean is doing this scene, how he is capturing him, not necessarily in the steps of the action, but how he feels about it.
What does he say? What does he not say? How does that feel to us that displays this character and gives us some insight?
So when I turn the page, I'm like, what is up with this guy?
I want to see more of this guy. I want to read page 4.
Exactly. I want to know about Dane. So that's what what we're going for. You can turn him up to 11 if you want to. All right, so should we start from the top? Some little stuff?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, so when you describe a guy as average white dude, that's a non-description. It tells me nothing, right?
Okay.
I don't care that he's average. I don't care that he's white. His name's Larry, so I know he's a dude.
Gotcha.
You don't need any of that. You could just say Larry 33. Or you can say Larry drags his lazy ass out of his car. Right? And you would get a little more flavor. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How is this guy, what am I perceiving about him?
Right.
How does he seem to me?
Mm-hmm.
Is he lazy? Is he angry? Is he arrogant? Is he whatever?
Right.
Is he bubbly? I don't know.
The thing about characters when you're introducing them, and I really want to state, again, if we had 10 writers talking about this, we would lose 5 hours. Everybody is very strongly has strong opinions about this. Here's ours. You don't have a lot of time to absorb big descriptions of people. You don't have the mental space. You're in a story. It's better to get out a sense of the character in what they do right away and the way that they do it. So if Larry is a scam artist, let him do something where he sees that he's a scam artist a little bit. Not in literally, because you don't want to give it away. But you want to get that he's kind of a loser. You could just say 33 loser. That would actually help me a little better, but that might give it away too. I don't know. But maybe his car is a beater, right? And as I think you said, it's a beat-up Honda Civic. Mm-hmm. That's great. But I want to say, driving the best car he's ever had.
No, that's the car blocking his driveway.
Oh, okay. What's his car then? What does that tell me?
His car.
And those are the opportunities. If you said Larry Musker driving a 1985 Plymouth Duster, which is the best car he's ever owned, I'm going to kind of get a sense of him right away. That might be a terrible example, but you see what I'm trying to go for.
Right, gotcha.
It's all about giving me information about the character, not just the blocking.
And there's one more layer to that that I personally become very fond of, which is when you have someone entering a scene, state their emotional attitude about the moment they're in, so the actor knows where your head's at, right? Like if it's Larry, if he's tired, if he's pissed off, it's whatever it is, just say that up front. He gets out of his car, pissed off and exhausted, and starts hiking towards his front door.
Yeah, limping towards his front door.
For you, whatever that is. Like, okay, now I see how this guy is playing this moment.
Right.
Right.
Larry digs in, pulls to a stop, digs in his ashtray, looking for any butts that have a little more tobacco left in them. Whatever it is, can't find them. I mean, this is too big that I'm going in, but it's just trying to find his frustration, his feeling, very efficiently. I have now repeated exactly what Jim said. So let's move on. Now, Larry exits his car, and you write, and we see that he's on crutches. Okay, so we see. We see is another thing that writer Twitter and writers get all bound up about. And I think there are ways to use we see. And there
are times it's almost unavoidable.
Right.
But you want to avoid them anytime you can, in our opinion.
Right. Because you're taking us out of the story in a minute, right? You're just saying we see. You're like, oh, that's right. This is if you can avoid it, unless you need it, lose it. So it could be Larry exits his camera.
Is in a camera?
Oh, sorry, his car. He's on crutches and has a massive cast on his left leg. Because I didn't.
Gotcha.
You don't have to tell me we now see it because I didn't see it before. You didn't call that out. You're telling me a story, and it's
better yet. Wearily exits his car and blah blah blah. Right.
Right. And then when you start, Larry stabs at the front tire with one of his crutches. Why does he do that?
I just kind of, I don't know. I just feel like, if I would probably like kick the front tire of
because he's frustrated. Then say
because
that.
the car's blocking his.
Yeah, exactly. So you can say pissed, frustrated, all that good stuff, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing that Sam and I sometimes talk about, because Sam will be looking to do the version where, well, of course he says motherfucker, right? He must be pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and say it. Spend the word. Right, to convey what the emotional state of these people are.
Got it.
Okay. His cast breaks and falls off. Now, that's a problem because that tells us right away that there's something wrong with the cast, that he might be faking, that all of those things. And you basically...
That didn't bother me because we're going to know that momentarily anyway.
But that's the whole turn. I mean, that's the big turn of the damn scene, is that's the point of it. And I feel like we're losing some of the...
But you're not going to have video evidence without it.
No. But I don't need it to. I need him to run. If he can run, it's not the cast breaking. It's the fact that he starts to run away from the dog.
But I think if you're running with a cast on your leg, you're naturally going to be limping, and you're not going to know that there's not a broken leg in there. You just know that he's terrified of a dog.
Fair point. Zach, you better figure that one out.
You can see how we spend our days. We love having a third voice in the room to say, okay, that one.
Now we get to Dean Miller. Finally to Dean Miller. And by the way, in the writing of that whole section where it's Larry mutters himself across the street, this is a whole sequence when the dog starts to attack the guy. Mm-hmm. In this one, you can build it on the page, the tension. I'll do the terrible version. Across the street, a dog begins to bark. Larry turns and spots a huge German sprinting right towards him. Dash, dash. Next one. Larry, panicked, drops the crutches, takes off.
If you think about how you describe it on the page as a series of shots, which is what it's ultimately going to be, and you're describing the huge German shepherd becomes a line and starts lunging at him, dash, dash. Then the next shot you would see, make it a new action line. And you're on Larry, terrified, drops his keys and runs for, whatever it is.
Right.
And you just keep building it like that, and you'll get this momentum on the page.
Right.
That is just dragging you from moment to moment. You go, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit.
Right. Larry reaches his door, is what you wrote. Why does it matter that he reaches his door?
Because I wanted to think that he might be able to get away. Like he's almost 100%. There, but then
Exactly right. Exactly right. So when you do that, make a meal out of it. He reaches the door so close to safety. But then, and he desperately he's 3 feet from...
Takes his keys out, drops the key.
Dash, dash, right. It's the drop the key and all that. You could do any version of that, but you're building the tension as you get there.
Okay.
All right?
I gotcha. Yeah.
Nothing can be neutral. Everything has a point.
Emotional charge on everything that you can, wherever you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
He dives for it, but it's too late. It's on top of him. He screams in terror, and the next thing he feels, that's great.
Yeah.
Right? Because he screams in terror. It's too
late. He
late.
shuts his eyes, and then he feels a warm tongue.
Larry Musker? It's great. I love that. Moving along, right? Let's talk about... Oh, sorry.
And just to say, you might want that moment, right? He looks up to see Dean Miller. Okay, spend a line. Describe who he is seeing, because this is our main character, Dean Miller, right? To take a moment, a shaggy-haired, guy with thick glasses. I don't know, whatever the fuck. He looks like smiling patiently down at him, or looking at him concerned, or what's the emotion on Dean's face as he's looking down at him.
Right. And this comes back to how you feel Dean is, because when Dean says, I'm Dean Miller and I'm your worst nightmare, that I didn't know what that meant.
That line felt a little stock to me. Like there was a little bit of that, what's the 48 Hours Eddie
Murphy and Nick Nolte?
Yeah, where he's got a badge,
right.
And I'm your worst nightmare, I'm an N-word with a badge.
I mean, the thing that's so hard, it's for me, it's less the line than, is that how Dean is? Because the rest of the scene, he's not that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a weird one because I was thinking, like, in my head, how I was, like, imagining it. He was kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek. He's like, he knows that's a really corny thing to say, but he's kind of just, like, fucking around. I don't know. Like, it was in my head how I was imagining it.
He could be joking around.
Yeah.
Say that.
Or he could just be grinning. Right, yeah. I don't know that he is joking.
Right, he could say, let him say with a grin, "I'm your worst nightmare," and he holds out a hand and helps him up, and says, "My name's Dean Miller. Right. I'm blah blah blah," and he goes into his next line.
Right, or "I'm your worst nightmare." I always wanted to say that.
Right,
I mean, it's pick your things, right? Because Dean he's unflustered. You can't fluster him this whole time. He is in his element.
I'm your worst nightmare. Oh, just kidding. Here, let me help you up.
That's
No, really, I am your worst nightmare. Because here's why.
No, come on, that's probably your ex-wife.
Right.
The second one. I mean, there's so many versions, and everything we've pitched is terrible.
Right. The second one, that was Rhonda, right? Right. How do you know that? Oh, yes. I know a lot about you.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. Or he doesn't answer that. That's where I would take that out.
Kind of stuff, right?
Right. I'd be like, "Oh, that's Rhonda. How do you know that?" And then he just keeps going, and we're like, "Oh shit, how does Dean know all this? What's going on? I don't understand what's going on." And you're building an intrigue. And it's not neutral.
Because now you're with your other guy you first met, and he feels a little lost and trapped, right? What the hell's going on here? He's on the wrong foot, so to speak. Right?
Oh, right. I get it now.
He doesn't have a leg to stand on? Is that better? Like, oh, no, he does. Oh, and that's the problem. He does.
I'm never going to get this time back. So... when Dean says, "I've got footage of you sprinting for your leg on your porch on your broken leg," we don't even need that line necessarily.
No, we know that.
We know that.
We just saw it.
It's what, dude? I'm a private investigator. What? Now I'm no lawyer, but I imagine your little slip and fall lawsuit against once this video of you running across your lawn gets entered into evidence, right? So. It's just a question of being efficient, but also how can I lose lines that don't make me happy?
And then you can replace some of those lost lines with the stuff that adds flavor and character and revelation, right? Like he could go straight into talking about the Mr. and Mrs. Kinsella. Right? Like there's ways to be oblique about it where he's not going A, B, C, D, E as he explains what's going on. He's jumping to D and we don't quite follow, and maybe the other guy is wondering what the hell he's talking about. Maybe he says, how about this? This is just a pitch. Try to make it different rather than Dean just laying it all out. I've got footage of you sprinting. Oh, hold on just a second. And then he takes out his phone and it's ringing, or he calls and he says, "Oh, hi, Miss Kinsella." And, I'm here with Larry, and he would like to, and then you can go into that. And then it's a three-way conversation, and you see Mr., I don't like my pitch anymore. I never liked it. That's okay.
Yeah, I like that, yeah.
But I'm just...
It's a writer's room. Go ahead and pitch.
Right.
Let it talk for a minute.
All right, let it talk for a minute. So what I'm trying to get at, and this is actually what we do in the writer's room. Here's the crappy pitch. What can we get out of it? I'm trying to get away from two guys just talking to each other.
Right.
I'm trying to get now, okay, tackle, dog, I want to define Dean.
And if we live in the point of view of Larry, right, like he's just trying to get into his house, somebody sicked a dog on him, his cast fell off, he fell off his porch, whatever the hell happened there at the door, right, like all this shit, and there's some guy standing over him who's talking to him, he's like, "Who the fuck are you, and what are you doing to me?" Right? And if you let Dean enjoy that, or in some way at least play with that situation, it gets to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Right? What are you saying to him? What do you want to hear from this guy? What does Dean want to hear Larry say?
Right.
And that's what he's going to push some buttons and see if he can get him to say some stuff, and Larry's going to deny it or say other things or ask what the hell's going on. But Dean in this situation knows that he holds all the cards. He's got this guy by the short hairs, and he can do whatever the hell he wants. What does this character do with that situation?
100%.
Gotcha.
I could absolutely not say that better. Which is the
it's
last
very
time
rare.
I will ever
I've
say
never
that,
heard that before.
to Jim or in front of Jim. And then, so we go through, and by the end of the scene, Larry says, "Okay, fine, I'll do it." Again, I want to see a different reaction from Larry, where he gives up. But wouldn't it be cool if Dean's messing with him now? Because Dean just needs the video. But he's having fun. How does he grind Larry down into the dust? pay their legal. If you'd rather I show this is all straight ahead. How is the Dean way of doing this at the end? For example, is Dean the kind of guy that by the end of it, Larry's his best friend, even though he's made him do all these terrible things? I'm trying to find something that I can't guess. The natural conclusion of this scene is I'm going to show you this evidence and you are going to give in. So if I know that's the straight ahead version, how can I funk it up a little bit so it's not quite as predictable at the end? You know?
Gotcha.
And you might want to, leaving that scene, you might want to be on your main character. How does he feel leaving the scene? Right. Like, what's his emotional takeaway from this exchange? Because that's what I'm going to want to care about, because that's what that character's bringing into the next time I see him. Right. In theory, anyway.
Right. Or if you never want to see the dog again, he says, good. He says, okay, fine, I'll do it. Dean says, good. And by the way, this is your new dog, Chester.
Right.
And he turns away and walks away.
And the guy says, will you get your dog off my chest? And he says, that's not my dog.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Whatever it is. But I just want the turn. I want something that I did not see coming at the end. That will cause me to end the scene knowing Dean more and not having guessed it from the beginning.
And all of these notes we're throwing at you, it's great because you set up the right framework for a scene.
Right.
The structure is right. It's just now, okay, well, how do we change it up and make it really interesting and the best version it could be?
Right.
And again, easy for us to say.
Right.
We didn't sit there with the blank page and create a scene that actually makes sense, which is the hardest thing in the world to do.
No, this is great, guys. This is I'm already thinking of different ideas to really spice it out. This is great.
All right. All right. I helped you more though, right? I mean, come on.
Listen, I wasn't going to say it, but
right. Someone's got to show you what not to do. That's a big help.
Zach, thanks for sharing your scene with us, man. It's really it's so much fun to watch something go from beginning to then scenes and then wherever it's going to go.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, guys.
All right. Good luck, Zach.
Thanks. Be well, Zach.
All right. So that was Zach's scene, and the next scene study guest is J. Hunter Richardson.
Jay, you found a novel that very closely resembles your story premise, and that discouraged you a little bit. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, not only did it resemble my idea, it was just a better idea on the whole. So I was actually going through novels, like science fiction novels, and like the top 10 science fiction novels in the past decade, and going through, really cool stuff to find inspiration. And one of them just happened to be almost to the point, like exactly what my concept was, but done in a better way.
That is a drag.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I hadn't gotten through like a full first draft of the pilot, but it was enough for me to be like, you know what, this is just too much, too close. I'm going to let this go and I'm going to move on. And maybe one day, if they ever adapt it, I can, work on it. But boy, howdy, was I bummed.
Let me take a different view, maybe, which is who cares, so what? It doesn't matter. That's what I would say, Jay. Because let me explain why. All right.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the goal of writing this pilot is to get a job, not to sell the pilot, right? So the chances that showrunner or whomever, the writer that you're submitting it to or the agent or whatever, has actually read this sci-fi book is very low, right? It just is. Now, there are a lot of sci-fi geeks, but I don't think there's a bigger one than Jim Dunn when it comes to reading, and he never heard of it. So I don't think that's really a negative, that it exists in some form of the IP. Plus, the central hook that you had was not, so simple and so hooky that it's so clearly going to be from that book. There were a lot of different aspects to it, and you could focus on any one of those aspects, and your characters are completely different, and your world is different. So I'm not sure you should throw that away, unless you're looking at this as an excuse that you were getting sick of writing that thing, and what you'd really want to do is like, oh, praise the Lord, I could put this thing down.
You might be right on that one. It was one of those things where I was really struggling to make it work, and I think me being like not a defeatist, but when I saw the story and I saw the ideas that they had come up with that were like, oh man, that would have worked so much better if I had thought of that first for my own project, I decided maybe not give it up, but for right now, I think it's okay for me to step away from it and focus on other things for the time being. I will revisit it because I do enjoy it.
I think there's always the shadow of when you see someone else do an idea very similar to something you have, it starts to not feel fresh in your head. I've encountered that before when we've had ideas and then bumped into something going, oh, shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is frustrating when someone cracks the code that you couldn't figure out how to do it, and that happens all the time when I'm watching TV, and I think that was a really elegant way to handle all of that. I wonder if we would have come up with it, and if I'm feeling good about my writing, I was like, oh, we totally would have come up with that. And if I'm feeling not so good,
I never would have thought of that in a million years.
Never. That is so good. Damn it! Why didn't I think of that? So I also think, Jay, that it's good to. I think aborted scripts are important to put them down and let them. Just be like, okay, I learned a lot doing this, and I will make different mistakes next time.
There are times when, that is the lesson you learn is, oh, I was never going to figure this one out right because it's just a fog in my head.
And you're attached to too many things, and you can't let them go, and they're tripping you up, and it's an abusive relationship you have with this script, and you have to know when to let it go.
So to get out of that relationship, let's move on to Punx Not Dead, which is the project that you brought to us today for scene study. Now, you brought to us the first, I guess it's the opening, we'll call it. And so we've got Meagan Daine here with us to help us read.
Megan's a writer, too, so don't blame her if her acting. I have never heard her read, so and it probably won't be as bad. I'll be the worst reader. Jim will be second worst. I don't know about JR, and Megan will probably be in the land of the blind. So we're going to try. So please forgive us.
Well, and before we get into actually reading the thing, I think it would help to have an overview of what's the project, Jay?
The project is a pilot that I've been working on for a little bit called Punx Not Dead, and it is about a medium or somebody who could communicate with the dead, and basically his adventures trying to make a living off of a less than regular job. The overall arc of the entire series is that his abilities are needed by some nefarious groups, and, that causes problems for him in his regular life, which is just him trying to play music, be in a band, and try and survive as, a punk living in the valley.
I got to say, Jay, I really like that premise. It's very simple. You're not reinventing the wheel, but you're making your own wheel.
Cool. I don't actually know what that meant. I just want to say right now, Jay. So
you're taking a simple idea and you're putting your own spin on it, and it's very clean. It's gettable very easily, and yet I could see where you could do 100 stories on that.
And what's his name? Is it the character?
Kyle Snyder.
So Kyle is a medium, right?
Yep.
And he wants to make a living being a medium so that he can play his music or do whatever it is that he does. It's that simple.
Right.
All right. I'm not going to give anything away because JR is going to do the slugs, but the teaser starts in 10,000 BCE. Which is not where I thought we were going for Kyle, who lives on San Fernando Boulevard in Burbank or wherever.
Punx Not Dead. Exterior, the risen temple of Noctor, 10,000 BCE. Grom the Redeemer, a brutal Hyborian warrior, stands before the ancient temple of Noctor. It looms, covered in algae and seaweed, built long before rising to the surface. Grom looks upward, squinting at a small object that faintly flickers in the murky daytime sky. A star? An omen? He thinks nothing of it and moves on. Grom steps over the corpses of human cultists and creatures ripped from a sailor's nightmare. Grom tightens his grip on Shirith, a mystical sword covered in archaic runes.
This is the hand of reckoning. Within it I hold the blade, Shirith.
A nightmare creature reaches up with its gnarled talon, an onyx ring wrapped around its middle claw.
It is the word of the Oracle. I am the one who will cleave the final blow into the skull of the Old One. I alone will bring about the true death of the sunken god.
Grom crushes the creature's skull with the heel of his boot.
It is my destiny to sever their links to this plane.
He journeys forth, reaching the stone doors of Noctor. Through the cracked opening, we see something gigantic move the darkness, its many eyes reflecting in the sunlight.
On the risen island, he waits inside the temple of Noctor. His followers are gone, minions vanquished. It is only him and I that stand. Nothing of this earth can stop me now. Nothing.
Crack! A tiny meteorite obliterates Grom on the steps of Noctor. The doors to the temple shut. From inside the smoking crater, Grom's mangled arm reaches out, twitching as he passes into the great beyond. Act 1. Interior Jamtown practice space, present day. In a dingy practice space outside room 6, Tiny Ortiz, 23, the drummer in a Morrissey cover band, looks directly at us.
Forget about that. It's all in the past anyway. Ancient history. What matters is today. I mean, shit, it might actually come up later, but for now, let's not worry about it.
An old janitor pushes a broom in front of Tiny, and we pull back to reveal that Tiny is on the phone. He quickly pushes the speaker button and puts the phone to his ear.
Sorry, you were on speaker. What was that?
Tiny listens to the other end of the line as he eyeballs the cork board hanging on the wall. There's a flyer on it. He pulls off a perforated contact tab at the bottom.
Listen, all I'm saying is that for all of this to make sense, maybe we need to open up our minds to other possibilities. You know, maybe we look into, like, supernatural stuff.
As Tiny walks off with drumsticks in hand, we push into the flyer. Need to say goodbye to those that have already passed? I can help. 888-668-3323 /888 Not Dead Kyle.
I might know a guy.
Suddenly, from the room behind the wall, an explosion of chaotic sound. Punk rock. Interior Jamtown practice space, room 6, next. Kyle Snyder, an anti-establishment oi punk, picks a kick-ass bass line to a thrash punk song. The rest of the band gives it their all. Chirps, 18, is the band's resident riot girl and guitar shredder. Brian, 30, screams like he has no other choice because he doesn't. Big Jim, 25, stares off into space with utter concentration so that he doesn't lose the tempo. The song ends with an abrupt stop, and Kyle is already unplugging his bass.
Sorry, guys. I've got to call it, man. It's work. I'm a working man.
What? You finally got a real job?
Kyle puts his bass into its case and slides it into his cubby.
First of all, what I do is a real job. It's just not, conventional.
Kyle turns off his amp.
Why don't you just get a real gig, dude? Scamming widows feels scummy.
Kyle is offended. Not mock offended, but truly offended.
I don't scam widows. I don't scam anybody.
Okay, well, a steady gig then.
Chirps pulls out a wad of cash and hands it to Brian.
That would conflict with my DIY mentality. No suits, no masters.
Are you still helping the cops?
Big Jim pays up, too.
Technically, yes, but on my terms. And today, it's civilians. The flyer thing is working.
From his backpack, Kyle pulls out the same flyer we saw on the corkboard.
In fact, I have to swing by and make a few more, which is why I'm in a hurry. It's part of my hustle.
Kyle pulls out an envelope labeled rent, and from it he counts out the cash. He hands it over to Brian.
It has nothing to do with the goth girl that works there.
Kyle responds with a blank stare. Interior, the Copycat Copy Shop. Present day, morning. This looks like we've made another time jump back into the 80s, but we didn't. The interior of the Copycat Copy Shop just hasn't been updated since it was opened. Kyle's eyes are locked on Kat, a second-generation Chinese immigrant and Hot Topic goth. She punches in Kyle's order on the old copy machine.
But do you ever feel like the universe has everything planned out for us and everything actually happens for a reason? Like the universe lays it all on the table and we pretend to understand, but we don't. Like some sort of cosmic David Lynch movie, like an esoteric destiny laid out by a force we can't even begin to understand.
Bitch, shit, ass, taint!
The copy machine beeps an annoying warning. Kyle watches as Kat punches and kicks the copy machine, ignoring him.
Yeah, me neither.
All right, that is
right.
Punx Not Dead, the opening of Jay's pilot.
So, Jay, let me ask you a first question. What was the most painful thing to listen to? Was it?
Oh man!
Was it? Was it?
So many choices.
Yeah, there's so many choices there. Was it Jim's rendition of Grom? I think that's got to be right up there. That must have really hurt because that hurt me. But really, how did that feel?
Okay, I'll be honest. This is the first time I think I've heard anybody read any of my scripts out loud, and it was jarring.
I remember my first time, Jay.
Yeah.
So does Jim. We were there together.
That's a little brutal.
Oh, man. It was cool. It was very fun to hear it. But man, oh, man, is it bizarre to actually hear this outside of the voice in my own brain.
It is, isn't it?
It's cool because having somebody else read it, it's like I can see now because, this is written in my voice. And so I would say things a certain way. Hearing other people read it kind of gives me an idea of like, oh, I need to clean these lines up so that it's more natural for, the people reading it, regardless of who they are. So that was actually very cool to hear.
I think with dialogue, the number one thing that I figured out over time was the simpler the better because the actor will move around and figure out. You even heard me, and I'm not an actor at all, but I'll try to find a way to say it the way I say it. So
yes, exactly.
You're not going to write it the way I would say it. So the lines can be pretty simple, generally. Less is more in that department.
Right.
Now, what about, let's get to Grom. For me, there's this crazy tone shift from the teaser, which is like very graphic novel-y, kind of very supernatural, to Burbank or Jamtown practice space present day, wherever it is. Why did you do that? What were you thinking there?
I really want this to be kind of like a genre, like fluid type show. So the idea of opening up with ancient old god lore and stuff like that with like a very dark, serious tone and then switching to a more lighthearted thing is kind of how I pictured myself taking this whole thing. I really want to bring in different genres into one show. The first character, Grom, comes back later as basically it ties into the story where Kyle needs to touch specific things that meant a lot to somebody for them to come through and he can channel them as a medium. He comes across Grom's finger bone at the end of the pilot, and that's basically how those two characters meet. So Grom actually becomes a main character in the show. It's kind of like his protector with an agenda to, fulfill a destiny, but he needs Kyle to do it.
So the tone is kind of humorous then.
Yes, I feel like there's going to be a humorous tone. I think when you're dealing with a lot of like horror and gore and stuff like that, there has to be a little bit of humor to carry you, especially if it's an hour pilot. A lot of dour, depressing, murdery stuff is kind of heavy. So I feel like I wanted to add levity at certain points throughout the script.
I'm thinking Men in Black is where I'm going to. Now, granted, Men in Black was played for humor, but the juxtaposition of kind of a standard cop, the smart talking New York cop, and then facing an alien, and then the flip side of that is Vincent D'Onofrio, the alien who comes in, kills the human, who comes out, who's very normal American with a gun, and then he just kills him and then takes his skin and then deals with the wife. And so, I love that juxtaposition, and that helps me because the Grom stuff is so arch, right?
Mm-hmm. It's very Conan feeling.
Yeah, it's Conan, it's B-movie kind of stuff, and I say that with love of B-movies, but it's that way. Now, here's the thing. What I wish was I knew what the hell was going on in the scene.
Right.
And right now I don't. I don't in any of these scenes.
It's funny because I was figuring it was something like what you were saying, Jay, after a while. Mm-hmm. Grom is going to show back up later and be some sort of spirit that he's talking to. I thought he might be the spirit of the episode because he landed in the teaser, so I was thinking he might be someone who pops up in scene 4 or 5, whatever it is, as we see him actually do a spirit, because then there would be a rhythm to it. I'm a little worried about him being the finger bone at the very end. Mm-hmm. It feels like a long way from Grom to the end of an episode to me. And then when I initially read this, I read this before we started this morning, I was kind of confused. I wasn't really tracking everything.
Well, let's get into specifics. So
I didn't quite understand that he was really a medium. And I think it's because there's so many characters right off the bat that I was tracking that I didn't really absorb that Kyle is a medium. I love that premise, though.
Let me try to get more specific on what Jim was saying. First of all, let me start with Grom. I don't care that he's going to show up later in that very first scene, right?
Okay.
The scene has to be awesome by itself, regardless of what you're going to do. And I actually think Jim is bringing too much knowledge to it. He has to put himself in the body of the guy that's watching the show who's actually a little stoned. And he's thinking, I'm going to go have that extra ice cream sandwich. I know I said 3 was enough, but I'm going to have the 4th. That's who he is, right? And that's who's watching it. So we're watching this scene. Everything you have planned for Grom, I have no idea what the hell I'm watching, right?
Right.
So I think in that scene, I just want to get a sense of place better. Like when you say a brutal Hyborian warrior, I don't know what that is. And I don't know what he looks like. I don't know if he's 9 feet tall, if he's human. I don't know what it is because it's the risen temple of Noctor. I don't know anything. So you can cheat here. And by the way, what does Grom look like?
He's like a Conan the Barbarian type guy. That's why I went the Hyborian warrior type thing. Yeah, just very pulp magazine looking.
Right, and there's no question that Jim not only knows what a Hyborian warrior is, he's actually probably read the backstory of him and read some books while he was sitting around in his high school not getting laid. But what I'm looking for here is he's human. I don't know what Hyborian is. This guy's ripped.
Yeah, a little basic information for people who don't know Robert E. Howard pulp novel kind of stuff.
And he's probably got a chain of little heads around his. You know what I'm trying to get? I'm trying to get this guy is brutal. That's the thing. I want to get that feeling right away. This is the scariest human on Earth 10,000 years ago, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I will say, I agree with Sam, like setting the place a little better for people who don't know what you're talking about. The thing where the Magnificent Warrior is suddenly snuffed out by something, just like chomped. Like, it's been done before. It's still not bad. And going from this guy 10,000 years ago straight to the Kyle, and there's a poster up on the wall for a medium, like, okay, I can make that leap. I think watching the show, I will understand what the teaser has to do with the rest of the show.
Mm-hmm. But can we connect them, though?
Well, I think it is connected. I think
in the scenes right there.
I don't think you need to, though, because I think you've raised a question. What the fuck does this have to do with anything? Now I'm in a punk band space in the here and now. What's going on? And the answer is there's a flyer. And maybe you need to sell that harder.
Let me give you another idea. I'm not saying connect them exactly, because I don't think you're going to connect Grom the Warrior to. It's not an alien in New York being chased by. It's obviously 10,000 years ago. What I'm saying is this. First of all, the turn here, and I agree with Jim, the turn is a meteor comes out of space. For me, it would almost be better if one of the people wasn't dead. Not quite. It's not all, it's corpses everywhere, but one of them's not dead. And, his last lunge is he kills Grom. And I'm tracking that. So I'm saying, is it going to work? Is it going to work? And he does it. So that the turn is not just an out of the blue thing, because the scene has to be like, oh shit.
Or the meteor lands right next to Grom. Right. You think you're pulling that gag, right? It suddenly smashes right next to him. He looks at it, and Noctora goes chomp, or whatever the monster's name is.
Yeah, something. So that we're getting, the scene has to live on its own. Okay. And then what we do is, as Grom screams in agony, in fury that he's been defeated, whatever it is, we are now going to the Jamtown practice space, and there's a punk band next door, because the goddamn script is called Punx Not Dead, right? And then the scream is from the punk band, and that's the scream we're going into, and that's the connective tissue that I'm kind of looking for. Cool. If I was reading it, I'd be like, ooh, that's elegant. But they have nothing to do with each other. Right? I'm not coming at it from a structural piece. I'm coming at it from okay.
Transition.
This is intentional.
Right.
And it doesn't live by itself. Kind of does. but that is.
Well, I've got a question, actually. So when I'm looking at this, my instinct is to cut out this Tiny Ortiz scene and go straight to Kyle.
Yes.
What do you guys think about Tiny Ortiz?
I'd almost rather see Kyle putting up the flyer and then maybe do the tiny scene later where he takes the tag off of it. Something like that, because then we're going to Kyle, who's my main character here and now. It's traditional opening for a pilot or a series as you start on your main person.
Let me chime in here real quick. So it's funny that you guys say that, because, initially my transition was much more jarring it was kind of similar to what you guys had suggested, but I got a couple of notes that basically people are like, well, I don't know how the front, the first scene connects to everything else. So in my attempt to kind of like tell the audience, forget about that for now, I tried to tie it into the dialogue with Tiny, and Tiny's a character who comes back a couple scenes later, and throughout the episode. That was my attempt at like trying to tell the audience, like, don't worry about that for now.
I think the problem is it's I don't know what's going on in the scene.
The first two people you introduce have apparently nothing to do with your main story. Now, if you were doing a cold open on Tiny, and that you were going to circle back and get to Kyle in scene 2 and understand, he's the medium and Tiny's the guy who found the tag. But now it's kind of stacked, right? You have two intro pieces into Kyle.
So and of course, Jim and I can see that pretty quickly because we have done this same thing many times. But this is called hold on. This is going to get good in a minute.
Right.
It's that thing that we all do, which is just got to get this out because Grom's going to be important, and then I just got to get Tiny in there because that's going to be important. And meanwhile, I'm on page 2. I don't know what the hell's going on, and I am frustrated. Remember, those first, it's always been the case, even back before there were a million books on writing scripts, that everyone knew the first 10 pages were the most important. And I don't think it's about the first 10 necessarily, but as someone who has to sit there and read, or gets to read scripts, sometimes has to, sometimes gets to, I do want to just be in it. I want the scenes to just crackle, right? And I want it to go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, be like, ooh, what's next? What's next? So the Tiny thing definitely confused me.
Right.
I'll pitch you just a thought about a solution or an idea of how to approach it. Like, you could do something, I like Sam's transition with the scream, right? Say Grom is getting chomped by the big bad, and he starts screaming, and you go into the scream. You could cut to Kyle, who's quickly tacking up his flyer, and he's hearing that scream and going, oh shit, I'm late. But you're heavy on Kyle and you're heavy on the I'm a medium flyer he's putting up. So you make that connection, and then he's running in because he's late for his band, and you see he's got his guitar in his hand, whatever, and he goes running in, and then blow to titles. Use titles there. And then you could come out. You could slug titles, and you come out. We're in the practice. We're in the same place you just went into. But
what's interesting before titles? I don't understand. Like, what's my takeaway when I go into titles?
You've just killed someone 10,000 years ago, and you just established this person's a medium.
But establishing is not enough. It's not interesting.
But it's not. But it doesn't have to be that, because it's the same. You're coming in then. Well, to me, it could work.
Jay, don't listen to Jim. There's no way.
Because once I know who Kyle is and that he's the medium and he's posting the thing, then you could go to your Tiny Ortiz scene, and I know that someone wants him. Or you cut straight into the practice session, but now it's half an hour later, and Titles is giving you your time cut. And
so to go into Titles, I need to be hooked. I want to be like, that needs to be an oh shit moment, not a, okay, I've got the elements lined up for a story. I feel like that's too bloodless. I just want some hook. And we just don't have the hook yet because I don't even know what Kyle really wants. I don't know what he wants in the first few scenes or what's bothering him. Forget about what he wants. I don't know much about him yet. I know he's frustrated with the people in his band. You finally got a real job, but I don't really know what it is. I'm a working man. It's just not conventional. All that stuff. I still don't really have it clear what it is. I just know he's got a side gig. Right? And everyone thinks it's a hustle, and it's not for me. It's not coming together what it is. What I'm looking for is I wish I knew. I don't understand what Tiny has to do with this, really. And I don't know what he has to do particularly with Kyle. Am I missing something?
Well, he's going to be a client, right?
Yeah, but that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's the setup of he's going to be, like you said, it's two setup pieces. And so I don't think Tiny belongs in here. You are responsible for what I understand with it.
Yeah.
Now, you're not responsible if I haven't taken my ADD meds and I can't track. That's not your problem. And it's not your problem if I'm doing laundry while I'm reading your script. That's not your problem. But if I'm sitting here just watching it, properly medicated, and I'm reading the whole thing and I can't track it, then you're not holding my hand enough, right? You're not guiding me to what I need to know, right? And,
that makes sense.
And I do want to say this: you can have too much guiding too, right?
Right.
But it's clear from reading this is you're a guy that's afraid to guide. You're afraid to be on the nose, and me too, by the way. And so I always push the other direction.
Yeah, this is something we go back and forth about a lot.
A lot.
How much do you treat the reader like a reader, and how much do you try and make everything transparent so it's just lines?
Right. All right, so let's move on to Kyle and his band. What's the turn in that scene? What's changing in that scene?
So, I mean, what I was trying to set up there was just establish, the connection to him and the flyer and what he does. And it's not totally clear. And, hearing it back and hearing you guys kind of read it, it occurs to me that the conflict there is not totally apparent, but he's spending his money on, the practice space rent and paying for things that aren't that important. Meanwhile, he's taking it out of his own, apartment rent money. And he's clearly not working that much. So what I'm trying to do is establish that he's not making great decisions for his own well-being, and he's working at a job that's not quite a job, and he's being a little bit too independent and saying well, I don't need a real job. This is my job. And he's not kind of doing the best for himself in his life right now.
I think to go with what Sam was saying before, thinking about this in the larger picture, I think I agree with Sam. The thing that would be most helpful here is to understand some of that about Kyle. And it's not coming out of just that scene. It's interesting that he has this unorthodox job, and maybe I think it would still be worthwhile to see him put up that flyer, some version of that, so we're aware of what his side gig is. But then you need to plunge into conflict. He doesn't have money for the band space and all the other people do, because he spent it on this other shit. I had to run a flyer for whatever his problem is, and really make more of a meal of these conflicts you're talking about.
Right. Let's enjoy what Jim just said, which of course was, I think I agree with Sam. Let's just enjoy that for a minute. Let that not go unremarked on. And also, we got the think, but I'm going to get that think out of there.
Like the meteorite crushing Grom, it happens about every 10,000 years.
Right, it happens. I wrote down two things: that Kyle, the structure guy, is completely screwing Kyle, the drafting guy, right? Kyle, the structure guy, is doing things like set up and establish. And he is completely fucking the other Kyle, the other Jay. I say Kyle, I meant Jay, right? You're messing yourself up, right? You are just... You can't say this scene needs to set up this. You can. You have to. I'm not. But in the scene itself, it needs to not.
That has to be a natural byproduct of a scene that's about something emotional that's going on with your character.
That's cool. And so let me pitch you a terrible version of this. Is that he's in Kinko's and he's picking up 500 copies of this flyer, and he just barely has enough money to pay for it. And when he steps out,
it's coming out of the envelope that's band space money. Right. And then he gets to the band space money, he has to go into his rent pocket to pay for the band space if you did something like that.
Yeah, okay, that's an even worse version of my bad version. I am just all over Jim today. But no, that's right. These are the shitty versions that we start with, that Jim and I start with. And it's you see what I'm saying? There's stakes. And if this was an even worse, to take Jim's terrible thing and make it worse, there's the mob guy waiting for his check out that finds him at the band space, or it's the guy who manages the band space, and he's like, you can't play, you don't give me the money. And now he's there, and Chirps has to pay, and Chirps is pissed at Kyle now, because he's like, you were supposed to do this, and they're fighting instead of playing.
Or the bandmates gave him the money to pay the rent, and he used some of it for his flyers.
Right. But that's got to be a turn in that scene. That's got to be a surprise. There's got to be some surprise there. And maybe what it is the whole band quits. So he has no band, right? Now you're going to get him back in a minute. So don't worry about that. But we just need shit to happen.
Yeah.
No set up and establish. Having said that, you totally need to set up and establish.
No, I mean, that's all awesome ideas, yeah.
Right, because if you set up and establish and it's not sparky, then you did not set up and establish, because I'm bored and I don't give a shit, right? But having said that, if you write a beautiful scene that doesn't set, then I don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm like, ooh, that was cool. Then you're screwing yourself, because you still have to set up and establish it. JR is telling me we can't beat that one to death anymore. So so this is where, so I just want to stick with it. So I still feel like we haven't, I don't know what the end, and I'm going to ask you what is, because we're done with all the scenes basically, unless Jim, you have
the
more.
copy shop, which I don't understand. Like, I understand that you're talking about his question of philosophy of life and all that kind of stuff, meaning in the universe, but that feels like an aside. I'm not sure it deserves a scene.
Yeah, I'm not either. That's something he should say to his bandmates.
Yeah.
That's something they could talk about.
Why do you keep trying to make money on this stupid gig as a medium? Because you're never making any money at it and it's no good. And he's saying, because I'm trying to figure out if there's meaning in the universe.
So I think we just got a scene here, which is he comes in, he's squandered their money. They're supposed to be playing. They're furious with him. He spent it on these. He doesn't want to tell them what he spent it on. One of them grabs the box, opens it. It's the flyers. They go everywhere. They're pissed at him. Why are you doing this? And in that moment, Kyle now emotionally says, because this can't be all there is. It can't be even this. It can't be this. It has to be more, or whatever his philosophy is. And his emotion, by the way, to his bandmates, you could be like, they're actually affected by it, and then they fine, and they dig in their pockets and they pick up their instruments and start playing, or they say, that's what she said last time, fuck you, and they quit. And to undercut the sweetness or the emotion of that thing,
or whatever version, but you can still get out you still get out that piece and put some meat on the scene,
right? And then now I know what he wants. Now I know what his problem is. Now I know what everybody does about this band.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he picks up his guitar, he hits it really hard, and he screams just like Grok. What was his name? Grom at the first start, and then we go to titles, and that's our framing device for that. If you want, Jay, I'm so glad I just want to say it's so much easier to rewrite your stuff than to rewrite our stuff. Just so you know, I hope we weren't too hard on you, but we get into it, man.
No, it's funny. This makes me want to be a part of a writer's room more than ever, because it's really cool. What you guys say definitely inspires me and gives me ideas of how I can make my stuff better. It's really fun to kind of, collaborate with other brains on stuff that, my brain's already reached a certain point, and hearing other people's input just opens up everything a little bit more, and it's really fun. So I do appreciate you guys letting me be a part of this.
It's the best part of the room, man. It's what I love too.
I think it's time to declare success and move on. And that's all we've got for you this week. Our producer, J.R. Zamora-Thal, is working the mixing board.
Our logo was designed by Julien Debar-Monclair, and our music was provided by Buddha-Rays out of Austin, Texas.
If you want to get in touch, we are at The Sam and Jim on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook and YouTube as The Writers' Room with Sam and Jim.
And if you like hanging out in the room with us, give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And tell a friend, would you, so we can get JR paid. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.